Did the Soviet Union agree to dissolve because NATO promised not to expand? The short answer: no, not exactly. The Soviet Union did not dissolve because of a formal NATO non-expansion agreement. However, there were discussions in 1990 during negotiations over German reunification in which Western officials made statements that many Russians later interpreted as promises that NATO would not move eastward. The controversy is over. What exactly was promised? To whom was it promised? Did it apply only to East Germany or to all of Eastern Europe? In 1989 to 1990, the Berlin Wall fell. Communist governments across Eastern Europe collapsed. Germany wanted to reunify. Soviet troops were still stationed in East Germany. This created a huge question. If Germany reunifies, will a united Germany remain in NATO? For Moscow, this was a security nightmare. In February 1990, U.S. Secretary of State James Baker told Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev that NATO would move not 1 inch eastward. This quotation is real. The dispute is what it meant. Many Western officials argue the discussion was only about East Germany. No treaty was signed banning future NATO expansion. Countries such as Poland and the Czech Republic were not being discussed. Their position is no legally binding promise was ever made. Many Russians argue the discussions created a clear understanding. Moscow allowed German reunification partly because it believed NATO would not move further east. Later, NATO expansion violated the spirit of those assurances. Their position is, even if it wasn't written into a treaty, the West broke its word. After the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, NATO expanded. Poland, Hungary, Czech Republic, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Romania, Bulgaria, Slovakia, and Slovenia. At present, NATO further expanded, adding more nations. The Baltic states were especially significant because they had once been part of the Soviet Union itself. Many Russians viewed this as NATO moving steadily closer to Russia's borders. Russian leaders, especially Vladimir Putin, frequently cite NATO expansion as one of the central causes of deteriorating relations. Western governments generally respond that independent countries have the right to choose their own alliances. This disagreement remains at the heart of today's geopolitical tensions. My question is, what would the United States do if Russia befriends Mexico and decided to install military equipment over there? Do you remember Cuba? Or recently, Venezuela and the capture of Maduro? First they said it was about drugs, then said it was oil. Which one is it? To take it further, what would Britain do if Russia befriends Scotland or Ireland? This is geopolitics. There are many moving pieces. Wars don't just break out from thin air. Don't have a knee-jerk reaction and put flags in your bio showing support or against without understanding what is going on. War is bad on all fronts because people die. But remember, a war economy is profitable. That is the reason for the push for World War III. The powers that foment these wars want you to believe there are only two choices. Either you are for the one and against the other. How about this? Neutrality, to see to the true picture. If you are not the one playing the chess, you will see the moves better. There is documented evidence that the United States supported civil society groups and democratic institutions in Ukraine over many years. A leaked 2014 phone call between Victoria Nuland and Jeffrey Pyatt showed American officials discussing possible future Ukrainian leaders. This led critics to argue that Washington helped orchestrate a coup. Supporters of the Maidan movement argue that millions of Ukrainians participated in protests. Yanukovych lost political support after violence against demonstrators. Ukraine's parliament voted to remove him. Critics argue that foreign influence was substantial. The change of government bypassed normal constitutional procedures. Russian-speaking regions saw the new government as illegitimate. These remain heavily debated interpretations. From 2014 to 2022, eastern Ukraine experienced a low-intensity war between Ukrainian government forces and Russian-backed separatist forces in parts of Donetsk and Luhansk. According to monitoring by the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe and the United Nations, thousands of civilians and combatants were killed during this period. Both sides accused the other of artillery attacks, violating ceasefires, endangering civilians. A common misconception is that only one side was shelling. In reality, the conflict involved years of exchanges of fire, ceasefire violations, and mutual accusations. Interviews conducted with residents in the Donetsk and Luhansk regions who voted to join Russia indicate that it became a daily part of their lives of artillery attack from Ukraine. The key here is, these regions became a part of Russia when they voted to join Russia. It cannot be stressed enough. So I ask you, what kind of mental state would you be in if you lived in these regions, knowing that today there will be artillery attacks, not knowing where the attacks are aimed? What kind of a life and security is that? These regions, throughout the period 2014 to 2022, asked the Russian government to help them. As we know now, Russia annexed Crimea in March 2014 and a full invasion in February 2022. Contrary to what you hear from the mainstream media, the war did not start in February 2022. You only witnessed the flowering stage.